Oh, round of applause then, fine. And we're live, thank you very much. We're here, Tropical Nomad, every Monday, Speak Up Monday. This is episode number 396. My name is Robert Ian Bonnick, otherwise Tourism Architect was one title, which we'll talk about later. Growth strategist in Indonesia, helping companies and people basically unite with the people, resources, the connections they need to succeed, being a bridge between private or foreign investment, government, and private enterprise. So that's the triangle. So tonight, well, actually the last 2 weeks have always been about more along the entrepreneurial line as opposed to social impact, but they connect. So my guest tonight, Michael, I think one of the first people that you met when you came to Bali. And just what we refer to is this ecosystem that we have in Bali. And for those of you, just a very quick summation, there's 4 or 5 things that are required to create a thriving ecosystem in close proximity. One is the availability of capital. We'll talk a bit about that tonight. Availability of talent, availability of projects, leadership, and friendly government support, right? So these are the 5 of the elements which are really important to create a thriving ecosystem. And the backbone of this are people like you. So Bali continues to attract, has always attracted some incredible, phenomenal people doing some really powerful things. I think the most important part of it, though, is the frequency that the people come with, right? So that of contribution being the main one. So those who, it's an amplifier, Bali, an amplifier of karma. So for those who come with that contribution mindset, who give more than they take, this is a place for you, right? So look, Michael Fox, welcome to the show. I was going to introduce you, but I think it's more fun if you introduce yourself. Please, over to you.
I just want to first digress for a moment.
Yeah.
When I first met Robert, he's so powerful in his the way he conveys value, and he's so endearing and it connects with people. I actually had dengue fever when I met you, and the value.
I didn't give it to him, by the way.
No, it wasn't. But it was so. I don't remember much, but I remember how wonderful you were, and how impactful you were, and it transcended even. I mean, don't get dengue, and if you do, go get an ozone treatment. It knocks it right out. But it was that powerful that it transcended. I was almost delirious, but the value that you conveyed, it was palpable. So.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. Now look, I know you, but people here perhaps don't. Maybe they haven't read the intro. So if you could maybe give us like a minute and a half. Who is Michael Fox in terms of not the bragging, right? But tell them what you've done, because you have been extraordinarily successful. Is the way I see it. I'd love you to tell people so they kind of know who they're about to hear from.
In a minute and a half.
I was saying a minute and a half. You know it's going to be 3, but it's okay. All right, we go.
No, I grew up in Boston, and I actually got I was always, and we can come back to this, but I was not a why person, but a why not person. Even from, when I was very, very young to even in high school, I got my first grant when I was 15 from the Navy for figuring out how the bends worked and how to prevent it and how to mitigate it. Did another research project in physics before I even went to uni. I went to MIT and had some. I was a troublemaker without a question, but in a constructive way. And it was always about why not, and always checking the fence and being the velociraptor, and about problem solving. I always start with a problem and work backwards. And started a consulting group that got me. I was doing work around the globe. Who knew, right? Took me to Japan and Madrid and all over the place. And then I got recruited to join SONY to launch the VAIO. Didn't see a long game with that, but got it out of the gate, and we did well with it. We thought it was going to be a loss leader, but it was profitable in our first $1 billion business unit in our first year. Then I got recruited by Mitsubishi to help the president's office realign their business units. Went to work for a venture fund, a $5 billion venture fund, as an EIR, an entrepreneur in residence. Took one of their portfolio companies from 50 million to 300 million in about 5 months in valuation bump by myself, which is kind of like very different, but it really is about people. That's one of the reasons we can circle back on. Then I moved. I ended up becoming a thought leader in corporate venture. Because that to me is where systemic value is. It's not about the money, it's about the value. And we can talk about that later if you want. And then got recruited to set up what started as one fund but turned into 3 funds to help solve a systemic problem of the imbalance between China and the rest of the world. Wow. So, and then there's the whole, Bali, coming to, I went to Australia and then went walkabout and just rediscovered Bali for, anyway. Cool.
One of the things that...
4 minutes?
I think you did it in 3.5. One of the things... Who was counting? There's a guy here saying it's 3.5. Yeah. One of the things that strikes me about you is that you have a big heart, right? Let's get straight to it. So venture often isn't necessarily correlated or paired with money, right? Money and heart going together. I want to make money. Okay, irrespective of what the impacts are, money comes first for some, right? I'm just painting a bit of a picture.
For most.
Now, for most, right? There you go. Thank you. I didn't want to say most, but you give me the license to. So then, as I said, for you, I've always seen it as a person of heart, right? So that time you mentioned dengue, right? And you came in, and I could see there's a person in there who was suffering, and then that's why I connected you to these incredible people. But if I asked you, right, when you look back into your past, maybe growing up in Boston, like where would you say that heart came from? Because you said you've always been a why not person, right? So where did that come from? Because I think they're both connected somehow.
Well, look, you have nothing if you don't have community. And
microphone up.
Yeah. Whoa, I'm learning.
There you go. Not that he's hungry, but eat the phone. Eat the microphone. They got him.
It's really funny.
He's done.
You don't have anything if you don't have community. I'll share an anecdote because I'm a storyteller at heart. I always felt a need to give back to community. So I carved out 10% of my time and always to give back. And I had been working for medical aid for El Salvador on the side, because I was inspired by Sidney Poitier to help, with the kids. You remember, right? And because I used some of my Mac graphic skills, I had some mad skill, so I was helping, people who were illiterate learn how to triage kids who had stepped on landmines, just on the side. And I was coming back on a flight from a fundraiser that we had done in Beverly Hills, and the next thing you know, I got invited as a VIP to the Reebok Human Rights Awards ceremony. And the next thing I know, one of my friends, this young woman I used to hang with at a freshman in college, she was winning the award. And she was, she was pioneering a group that was changing the law in Boston. The old blue laws were terrible for women. Literally, they treated women who were victims worse than serial killers and pedophiles. And so she was there to change the law. And I was so moved by her, I was moved to tears. I called her 8 years later. She said, next thing you know, I'm the only man on an 11-person board of directors of this thing. For 4 years, we ended up winning the Oscar in '94. So it's about impact. So you carve out, it's about what you do. A lot of people, smoke, not fire. And so it's always been part of my DNA to give back to community. And it started very young.
So this DNA, right, and this will be the last one. I like to pry a little bit. Okay, I get this part of your DNA, but where did that come from, right? So again, I had a different upbringing as well. Children's homes, orphanages, I've kind of spoken about it quite some time. But that gave me so much insight into how to do this. How to bring people together with vastly different ideologies, ways of seeing the world around projects that create these quadruple win outcomes for all of those involved, even those who are not directly involved. But it was the orphanage that gave that to me. So many experiences there, they just gave it to me, right? Yeah. But for you, the question then is if you could pinpoint maybe one of those experiences to give us an insight into what was happening for you as a young kid, what would you say one of those experiences could be? In the 8th grade, it was partly the environment that I grew up in. I had two incredibly colorful parents. One, my father was a rock star scientist and had 3 of his students won the Nobel Prize. I think 2 or 3. One second. Your dad a rock star scientist. 3 of his students won the Nobel Prize.
Yeah, I think 2 or 3. I lost count.
Okay,
and
well,
so
that will give you an insight. Just saying.
If you think that doesn't stunt your growth, that I mean, you're 8 years old and people come, "Where are you going to get your PhD?" I'm like, can I please enjoy my childhood first? So that's a challenge. And my mother managed to find her way. She documented the role of women through history before photographs. And so she found her own way to carry her flag, and she published 8 books. The first book was 450,000 copies in 8 languages. And until you've seen your mother's published in Swedish, herder to Sally Fox, you haven't lived, right? I mean, it's pretty awesome. But everybody in our family was always about doing. But to give you, there was one core inflection point, which was I was the part of a pilot class in 8th grade for a program called Facing History and Ourselves. And it was a young woman from the South who wanted to try to it was about how do we respect each other. And she used the Holocaust as an example to teach how things can happen and it was remarkable to me how powerful that was. I got called 31 years later for a reunion, and 75% of the people showed up. When have you ever had a reunion, just out of the blue reunion, and everybody came? And I looked at each one of the people, and they were all why not people. All of them. There was a surgeon who said, "I love surgery, but I love playing the trumpet," and he created a life. So half his year he's in New Orleans, and half his year he's in LA doing surgery. I mean, all why not people, right? So that wasn't. So when you're faced with the challenge, I was 15, and I just gotten certified as a diver, and I was whining about it. It's like, God damn it, why haven't the Navy figured out this Benz thing? They had 50 years. What are they, sitting there scratching their butts? And, my godfather said, why don't you just shut up and do something about it, and you figure it out. Don't leave it to them. And so that's when the problem-solving stuff started. And that turned into looking at it not from what have we got, I'm a screwdriver looking for a home, but how do you start with the problem, how do you look at solving the problem? And sometimes the pieces are right in front of you. We did a comparative analysis in physiology, and I know bubkiss about physiology, but we compared dolphins to human physiology. And it turns out there are only 12 anomalies because they're very, very similar. Yeah. And so on the bench and using this thing called the library and books, I managed to isolate all 12 of them. And on the 6th one, I figured out what was causing the bends. And the Navy bought my research and buried it.
Bought your research, then buried it.
Well, not invented here, right?
Yeah, God. Is it still buried?
Yeah, well, no. I mean, they wanted to put their name on it. So, that's on them. But but there's a systemic pattern here of problem solving, trying to do things that need to be solved.
What I'm loving, what I'm hearing, right, is the way I see venture is systemic problem solving, right? That's the way I see venture in general. Regardless of the question I asked you earlier on about money versus social impact, that's what I think. Venture has a great opportunity to solve some of the challenges in the world that governments can't. Right? So we'll get to that in a second. I see you got a point about that. I love the way you're moving, like Michael Jackson. So look, let me bring the question to you, right? So how do you see venture, and why do you see it in that way?
Okay, so I spent quarter century in Silicon Valley looking at how things are done. And to simplify it, they're basically 3 categories, right? So you either invest for markets, you invest for people, or you invest for products.
So markets, people, or products.
Right. And so if I see a really sexy product, I may want to invest in you for a particular reason, and maybe you created a new light bulb or whatever. Sequoia and some others look at markets, and they invest in markets, thinking, knowing that certain things like, IoT markets or whatever those markets are going to be, those are what they focus on, right? And sometimes it's about the people, and personally, I'm all about the people because you're going to hit walls. And it's those people, so for example, a typical question that a VC would ask a young entrepreneur is, you had a problem in your past. And that can be a badge of courage, that's fine. What was your experience? And if the target says, oh, it was this person's fault, it was that person's fault, you're done, right? At least as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. If you say, hit a speed bump. Had we done this, and here's what I learned from it, now you can move to the next level, right? And, a traditional venture, I learned an important lesson. It took me 25 years to figure out this, but people don't invest. They look for reasons not to.
And people don't invest, they look for reasons not to invest.
Yeah. So, and that was a powerful epiphany. When we started our first fund, I was on a flight from California to Iceland on the way to France, and I was looking at 6,000 companies. Literally, you just can't do it, But so I'm sitting there going through spreadsheets. They'd given me some great spreadsheets for this conference in Paris, and I'm just cutting and slicing, and all of a sudden, I realized I just basically sliced off Africa, because there's no IP protection, and I literally was completely choked up. And I realized that there's people, there's initiatives, there's passion, there's families, and I had to dismiss them. And then I thought to myself, I said, the day I lose my humanity, the day I'm done. Now, other people may not have taken that approach, but it's at least a partial degree of self-awareness, okay? But that's the only way. When we vetted 1,200 companies in the first year and got it down to a list of 100. And the only way you're going to get from 1,200 to 100 is look for reasons not to invest. And then you can take it seriously from 100, right? And it's an important, because maybe it's the way you have bad breath, or maybe it's the way you treat your people, or I don't like the way you treated that waiter, whatever it might be. Yeah, there may be, or he's not a very good communicator, or not a good problem solver, or whatever the reason might be. Ding, ding, and you'll never know why, because the VC will never say no.
You see, so Mohan, I'm bringing you up, fantastic, from Bangladesh, yeah? All right, so Mohan from Bangladesh is here. He's he's in the process of a startup, right?
Slowly, right?
So slowly, right?
But he's doing it. He's moving forward.
Well, he's doing it, right? So here's the thing. So there might be people watching now, maybe in 3 different places. 1, I'm starting a startup. I'm good to go. 2, maybe I'm early stage, so I've proven the model, but I need to get to the next place, right? Or 3 is I'm looking to invest, right, in a startup, right? So let's go like this. For each of those 3, so number 1, I'm about to start a startup. Number 2, I'm early stage and I want to get to the next place. And then number 3, maybe I've made a lot of money. I'm an angel investor looking into a startup. What comes up for you? Maybe 1 or 2 guiding points, and it can be to the positive or the negative. For example, right, reasons why not to invest is a great one, right? So what advice or nuggets of wisdom could you contribute for each of those 3? So once again, startup, just starting, like our brother over here, slowly. Number 2, early stage, so they've proven that the model works and they want to get to the next place. And number 3, someone who's maybe made the money and is looking now to become an angel investor. What advice would you give to each?
I'm going to change the question a little bit.
I knew you would.
Yeah. Sorry, buddy.
Don't be sorry. I expected it before now.
People get confused with the difference between money and value. And money is a form of value, to be clear, but systemic value is what attracts opportunity, what attracts customers, what attracts market adoption. It's all about the value. The money it's just a form of transfer, and I think people forget that. And when Plug and Play started originally, and I'm sure the mentors were great. It was a great initiative, a lot of incubators. Now they're in the 4th or 5th or 6th or 7th generation mentor. They're teaching people how to raise money at different levels. It's not about value anymore, okay? And you really, it's a, look, to be clear, if we look around, and it's important to be self-aware, winter's here, right? If there's a lot, this is where the best value happens from an investment standpoint, from the market adoption. If you can survive winter, it shakes out all the cobwebs, okay? And if you look at a lot of the history of the great companies, a lot of them survived or emerged from winter, okay? And first of all, I want to distinguish, it's not just about capital, okay? But if you look at value as another alternate, one of the reasons why, look, I've been living and breathing venture and knowing all the funds, and I've been Silicon Valley for more years than I care to. And in 2000, I started paying attention. I started listening to what the VCs were saying, and it was all the same stuff. And then I started listening to, and to be clear, the VCs are successful people themselves. So they were successful enough to warrant people investing into their LPs. But the people I found really interesting were the corporate venture guys. And women, men and women were amazing. They would always say really relevant things to each of their about their strategic markets, or Siemens or JetBlue or Samsung. They're saying really remarkable things about strategic, and if you understood and you listened carefully, that was cool stuff. But the problem I noticed was they can't talk to each other because of the corporate. If you haven't done years in corporate, you wouldn't see this, but they have a Chinese wall. They can't talk to they're very focused, and then they stick their head back in the sand, right? But if you learn how to talk to the corporates, those are the guys where they're married to value. If they want to invest in a given company, right? It's not about the company. They're looking at business unit and market adoption. So they're a go-to-market powerhouse. Okay, so if you can get their attention and on their radar, they're the best kind of friend you can have. But you have to learn how to talk to them. So I'll give you an example, okay? So congratulations, Robert, you just created a new light bulb, and it is awesome, okay? And it's fantastic. You productized, you've got some amazing customers, and you come to me as a VC and you say, hey, Michael, I've got this amazing light bulb. I've got these great customers. I got a defensible position. I've already productized, and next year I'm going to make 50 million. Okay, I'm going to say, great, let's talk, because my business is making money on money. I could care less about your light bulb, but you're going to show me how to mitigate my risk and how to give me a 10x multiple. This is what I'm thinking about. Can you do that or not? If not, next. Right? I need a 10x multiple so I can make 10 investments and one of them's going to hit. Yeah. You're basically just a playing card to me, okay? Yeah. And it's high risk banking, okay? Now I'm now Philips or I'm now Sony or LG, and you say, hey Michael, I've got this great light bulb. Now if you said the same thing, I'm going to say, great Robert, why the hell should I care? But if you know how to talk to me, and you say, Michael, I've got this great light bulb, I productized, I've already got existing customers, and here's how it's going to impact this business unit at $2.4 billion and give you sustainable value and product differentiation going forward, and here's how it's going to impact your halogen light group at $1.2 billion, I'm now your new best friend, right? I haven't changed the story. The value's there, but I could care less about your 50 million. And to me, parking 2 to 4 million into your company is couch change for me. I'm looking at how do I compete against my guys, you got to learn to talk the language to your audience, right?
I love that. Let me just pause you there, grab a drink. So for those people just tuning in, maybe on Instagram Live, Facebook Live, or YouTube Live, we're here with Michael Fox, and as you know, tonight is all about venture, right? The global venture scape, and Mike's had an incredible career from MIT, 25 years in Silicon Valley, launched VAIO for Sony, helped reorganize the president's office for Mitsubishi. So again, very decorated man who's now here in Bali. So look, even though the question that you sort of answered, actually, I know you kind of moved it around, which is super cool. What you're kind of saying then is that, for example, we mentioned 3 different folks. We'll make it 2. Those starting up and those who are early stage. So with the startup guys, what you're saying is, well, for all of them is understand the difference, what is value, right? And how can you bring that to the marketplace? Monetary is part of that value, but what is the value? And then the other one, which I haven't heard before, right? Which is, the importance of knowing how to speak to your respective audience. So if it's VCs, you just outlined a really great example of, if you can view it from their perspective, then there's more of an opportunity that they're going to listen to you or entertain your idea, so long as those variables match up, right? What else would you say? Because I'm saving you time. Because after this, Mohan's going to come and be there for half with you, for half, and they go, Michael, what about this? Michael, what about that? Michael. So what other maybe 1 or 2 gems would you give of advice to someone starting up?
Okay, so I think that and this is just a personal philosophy, I think we've become far too reliant on outside capital, okay? And if you look at risk, okay? And it's, capital and growth and value, it's all about risk. And if you look at the levels of risk and reward from a startup, if I was doing a startup, the first thing that I'm going to look at is, can I self-capitalize? Okay? And so if I had a product that I thought that Alaska Airlines couldn't live without, I would go to Alaska Airlines and say, hey, here's the deal. I think I can do this, 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 that. If you give me $250K up front, I'll give you 60% off for the life of the product if I can do this. And here's how we can hit certain milestones. So I give it first 100 grand on this. But if I can succeed, you can look at return on investment ad infinitum at 4 to 6 million per year. And here's how you can save it, and here's how you can mitigate your exposure. That would be the best case. So case number one is basically self-capitalizing. Okay, it's not just taking money out of your bank, but if you can get your customers to bank your idea, if you can share that value with them, where they absolutely stand to benefit, and it's not about pleasure, but about pain, okay? If you can help them mitigate pain. So it's about need, not want. Okay, not a luxury item. I can get my Uber faster. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about systemic problem solving. So that would be the first one. Then if there's a way to take a loan, right? If you can take a loan on if you're very confident, or even friends and family, right? Friends and family. So there's an increasing gradient, right? Then there's angel investors, then venture, then private equity. So increasing degrees of exposure. So in degrees of risk. So here we are in the middle of winter. Okay, and it's going to get more intense. The blizzard's coming, okay, or it's already here.
So the landscape of venture globally, we're in winter, but the blizzard is coming.
Well, it's going to get worse. Batten down the hatches. All the venture funds, you got to understand, think about your audience. So the venture funds are basically, how do I take care of my portfolio? Because my first responsibility is to my current investments. And a given portfolio, 10% is the Walking Dead. They know they're train wreck. 10% is the golden child. Don't touch them. They're on a great trajectory. And 80% is I don't know. So they're going to use their war chest, right, their dry powder, for their portfolio. That's their first priority. Okay? And because it's winter, they can be really, really selective. So there's not stupid money floating around. Okay? So I'm just encouraging people to think about, being smart about it. So if there's a way to, a VC typical thing will say, I'll come back and see me when you have first product, first customer. Well, you've just taken all the risk out of it, right? And if there's any angel money, you've just been crammed down as an angel. So, again, don't think about it from an investment standpoint. Think about what can you do to show proof of concept. Even something simple, a sketch that will help. I see so many companies that say, I want a 20 million valuation and a 2 million, and they start using buzzword bingo. Okay, I'm glad for you, but you've lost my attention, right? When she started throwing around blockchain and crypto, and you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know your market. You haven't talked to customers. You have no defensibility strategy. Tell me you know how to build a product, right? Tell me that you're prepared to take on a certain degree of risk.
This, I've heard you say it a few times now, this defensibility strategy. We're going to go into that next. But what I want to do, Ayu, hello, darling. Hello, Ayu. Ayu, everybody. She's beautiful. Love Ayu. So what we're going to do with this third mic is, and I'm going to give you some time to think, right? You're in the audience. You've made the time to come here. So we're wanting to get value, right? The ones watching at home, well, they can stay watching at home, but the value is for you guys here first and foremost. So what we're going to do, we're going to give you the mic about 5-10 seconds each, right? Means 15 seconds for most. What did you come here for tonight? Yeah, I know. That's why I'm giving you time to think about it. I got one over here going like, the eyes roll to the back of the head like, oh my God. That's why I'm giving you time to think about your answer, right? So for example, it could be, again, I'm looking at you all the time. This guy, Mohan, thinks I'm picking on him. So it's like that. I've come here tonight for advice on X. Or I've come here tonight because I just want to understand what the landscape is globally. Or I've come here tonight because I want to understand my plastic business, how I can get it financed. It's an early stage business because the model's already proven throughout Indonesia. How do I take it to the next level? So I just want you to tell us what it is that you'd like to know. That way you will also get some value too. And if you're like, I'm just here for a general talk to understand more, that's okay. It doesn't have to be a specific thing. But the more specific you are, the better, because then it's like a collective energy that is created. So in other words, you here and those watching over there are thinking of the same questions, right? But it's just that we're maybe too scared to ask the question or think it's too silly or something like that. So then we lose the opportunity to also contribute to others, right? So, okay, I can see everyone's like now thinking about the question. That's good. So, you get ready with that microphone. You can just give it to anyone, and in about a minute's time, 2 minutes' time, they'll get a chance. That I know you're ready. But, Michael, so defensibility strategy, you've mentioned it quite a few times. So, can you tell us what you mean? I think I know, but please say, and give us one example, real-world example, so we can really get that idea of what it is.
So, if you're asking somebody, think about this as about you, not them, right? Or you, not them. No, you, not yourself. You're asking somebody to put money, resources, and brand or strategic value at risk. Yeah. So defensibility is basically saying it's an exercise in de-risking, okay? And it can manifest itself in not only people immediately assume it's intellectual property, and it absolutely can be. It doesn't have to be. I worked with a company called Cobalt. And one of the things that we looked at with Cobalt is they continue their value and defensibility. Their secret sauce was amazing, lightning fast go to market. They could compile code on a Linux box and go to market like that. And every time Sun, their main competitor, at one was like this massive behemoth, it took them 90 days to basically reposition. And so they kept basically crushing the market. And finally, Sun had to just buy them for $1.4 billion to crush them. Yeah. I mean, that's what they turned it into a new business unit. But they couldn't afford the continual loss because their superpower and their defensibility was agility. So it's not just about intellectual property, but it could be a strategic relationship with a given customer or an access to a current market. Your government relations is a unique value point to be able to know not just who to contact, but what works, what doesn't. Yeah. So that's secret sauce defensibility. It manifests in people who think about these things, and I'm always thinking about these things too much. You know, you want to look for what's the edge, you know? Yeah. And a venture fund will say, "Oh, I have access to the Berkeley, UC Berkeley, UC Cal, Berkeley Skydeck. Their entrepreneur group. So I first crack at their stuff. Ooh, that's secret sauce, right? Yeah. That's an edge. People are always looking for that. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It answers beautifully. All right, microphone. All right. So because I know what you're going to say already, part of it, I'll give you longer. So feel free. Maybe take 30 seconds to a minute. What is it that you're doing? Which stage are you at? And then ask your question. I love what you're doing.
Thank you so much, Robert. Michael. Well, I'm doing recycled plastic, so we are in an early stage, and we are trying to expand. So right now we are doing in Indonesia, we are trying to expand in Southeast Asia, and basically I'm here to learn how to communicate our experience and how to communicate our value proposal to investors.
And just while Guzman gets the camera, if you can turn it around, let's see. How many tons a day or a week or a month are you doing?
Right now we are collecting in Indonesia 2,000 to 3,000 tons of plastic per month.
So 2,000 to 3,000 tons of plastic a month in Indonesia.
We buy the plastic. Yeah.
You buy. And from which areas of Indonesia?
So we collect in Java, Sumatra, Sulawesi, Kalimantan, and Bali.
Great. And so now your question, I know you phrased it before, but yeah, feel free. This is like turned into a ask Mike anything, right? Ask him anything. So if you could ask Mike a question, what would that question be?
So how to communicate to the investors our value proposal? Because I have 20 years experience in recycled plastic, but no experience is communicating with stakeholders or investors. So sometimes we are trying to express our business in words that we don't know. So,
are you talking about Bali specifically, or are you talking about any community?
Worldwide, yeah.
So one of the reasons why, first I applaud what you're trying to do, and I think it's amazing.
Thank you.
You know,
round of applause.
Can I get an amen? Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I think that a simple exercise is a graphic one could be very powerful in the eyes of either an investor, which I care less about, they're not going to care as much about, but a strategic partner might. And what you've done, whether by intent or by default, is you've really taken command of a very difficult supply chain. Okay, and you've managed to insert yourself successfully, mind you, to impact all the relevant stakeholders. Okay, in order to be able to achieve what you've done, it means you're talking to the Cadines, you're talking to the local communities.
Yeah, Banjars.
The Banjars,
Yeah,
right?
Banjars.
You understand how to localize that value. And cultural localization is everything. Coming from an American, I got to tell you, it's like the land of troglodytes. You ask them what this part of the world is, they call it other. Okay? I mean, and if you don't understand the difference between Cambodia and Laos and northern Thailand, southern Thailand, what's going on with Malaysia and Singapore, you're done. But what you've done here in Indonesia, you're talking about 17,000 islands, 280 million people. Oh my God, Sukarno had such a big, he was able to unify so many different cultures. And you're able to localize, and I bet you grew up with Legos, didn't you?
So I am Mexican, but I came here a few years ago. And basically the landscape, the business of recycled plastic in Latin America and Southeast Asia and Africa is the same. So there's a big communities who depends on the income of collect plastic and sell it.
Respectfully, I think the back end, you're absolutely right. But how it gets adopted on a community level is absolutely very different. It's different across parts of Indonesia. And it's different and I don't mean to be pretentious or presumptuous, but the back end is all the same. It's an engine, basically, of taking it from here to there. It's the sorting, it's the output, the customers, and so on. But the front end is very, very different. But you've been able to master, to illustrate. And offline, I'll show you some examples of cultural localization. And what you've done is tremendous. It's commendable. And I believe that you can use that as an illustration, say, hey, if I can do this for Indonesia that works this way, I can do this for the Philippines that works that way. Okay?
Right.
There may be similarities. And the Philippines really sort of threw me because I spent a lot of time, I made 19 trips there. It's really similar to America, but it's really not. and it'll throw you for a loop because you'll think you're back in the States, but you ain't. And it's the devil's in the details. So understanding those issues and how it impacts on the local community level, that would be tremendous, right? So if you're able to illustrate a graphic about here's the Indonesian pathways, other countries, especially places like the Philippines that are very similar in some respects, especially in this respect, will say, oh, we could do this, but it works this way here, right?
Right.
But they'll feel connected to you. You'll build an empathy bridge with them.
Perfect.
Now, I get a sense that your main question I don't think was answered. So one last time, hit him with that first question.
So you say about the investors looking for markets, people or products, right? So
those are the three forms of investment, yeah.
Three forms. So we are in an industry, in the recycle industry, that we reach markets and people because it's social impact and environmental impact. Plus, as I say to FMCG's brands owners, I say if we put money in the pockets of the people, these people will buy more products. They will supply their very basic needs. So right now we're in a moment where the big companies, they understand about price but not value, and this is sometimes hard to share how to transmit.
So let me make a distinction. Maybe that'll help a little bit. Okay, I was talking about capital, and that's just money on money. Okay, what I believe would be a real asset for you is actually a strategic partner that could invest. Okay, whether it's Zollner that may want to build one of your systems for you, or Siemens that may have value. There may be strategic value for them to play a role in this, where they can put money behind what they're doing, but they also bring a lot more strategic value, not just capital, and how they fit into that system of yours. That would be very compelling.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother. We're going to pass the mic to my brother over here. So, Guzman will come on to you soon. So, yes, ask Mike anything, right? He didn't even notice. I didn't even notice. We just go in flow. So, if you could ask Mike anything, one question, what would it be?
Is this an open mic?
Open mic. And look, you can describe for a little bit what, if it's a project that you've got, then just quickly, like we did here, explain what it is, and then your question.
Okay. I'm just actually here to learn more about being at the pre-seed level, like getting the product started up. So we have the product; it's basically ready to go. It's a new way to invest in properties. It's a profit-sharing app, and I just wanted to know, from a VC standpoint, what are some things that you would look at if I were to bring to you like an app or something of that nature?
Well, on a personal level, I'm looking at deep tech specifically focused on environmental issues. But on principle, the first thing I'm going to look for is market validation. Do you have something that I'm personally somebody who's driven by need, not want. So I'm not interested in a luxury item of a new kind of battery that's going to power my watch. I don't care about that. But I want to know, can you solve a systemic problem? And is there a customer base that will appreciate that? And the next thing I'm going to look at, is it a one-trick pony? Basically, would you be rolled over the minute, some large behemoth says, hey, that's actually kind of a nice shiny thing, and they roll over it, right? Or is it something that's actually systemic that you can sustain, right?
Right, thank you.
Thank you. One in front. No, you're good? No? So are you? We'll swing over to here. All right? It's your turn, brother. You know I was coming to you from the get-go. Let's go, brother. Let's go. All right, so just give the microphone a second, and we'll switch it on.
Here, you can have mine.
You got it.
I got it. So, I'm starting a new business. It's based in Bangladesh. So I already started to bootstrap the business, and that's why it's going slow. So.
What is a business?
It's a product. It's an app for students. Like, it's this highly competitive education industry over there. Like, for one seat in a government-sponsored college, you will have to compete against like 1,000, not 100, other students who wants to get the same seat. So the preparation starts like 1 or 2 years earlier, and I am just starting an app to help them prepare for that. So
it's an education, is that right?
Yeah. Education.
This sounds to me to be very market specific for your community in Bangladesh, is that right?
Yes.
So, I found in certain contexts the right kind of, they're flavors of money, right? And so I looked at an energy project, for example, in Palau. And that's a country with 300 islands with an archipelago of 21,000 people. And the people that were most driven by that was actually the National Development Bank, because every drop of diesel and gas that we can avoid saves them tremendous, it's value recovery for them. So in your case, if it's really about education and lifting the relevance within your culture of the supply chain, the National Development Bank that's part of their charter. Mm-hmm. Okay?
So we're going to pass the mic to Taylor in a second. Before we do that, I took part as a guest. It was invited by a guy called Ian Holtz, who is the head guy for Amazon Web Services in this region of Asia. And it was a cohort number 9. These are mainly early stage. And so it's called Accelerating Asia. So make a note of that, Accelerating Asia. Phenomenal. 7 pitches. So they brought 7 from Bangladesh, India, Pakistan. They all came in, and phenomenal, right? Some of the projects that they're working, they're already funded. They're already making money, right? They're the early stages. But that's someone who I'd get in touch because they have local knowledge of that region. Because they went through thousands of startups, thousands of projects to get to these 7. So if you need to know any more, let me know. But Accelerating Asia, yeah.
And that would fall under the strategic partner category, but strategic partner with capital. And so that's a perfect example where they have value add, whether it's cycles, expertise, technology, as well as capital itself. I mean, it's not just money on money, right?
Beautiful, spot on. Oh, yeah. So
Hello, that
All right.
It's okay, it works? Yeah, it works.
you're good.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you for tonight. First of all, so I will speak for Taylor and myself because we came together. What are we doing here tonight? So we are kind of building a new startup about, it's a technology startup. I actually reached out to you a few days ago on LinkedIn. We had an exchange, Nicola Bochenko, I don't know if you remember on LinkedIn, Robert, to describe to you a little bit of our concept. It is a tech startup linking businesses with content creators for promotion. So it's a concept that exists all over the world, but not yet in Bali, or actually in Indonesia. So it's for the Indonesian market. And so that's why we came tonight. That's what the project is about. And there was no really specific question. It was specifically to meet you tonight. Maybe have a conversation afterwards. But that's why we're here.
All right, so let me ask you a question.
Yes.
What's the biggest challenge that you're facing at the moment?
Well, the biggest challenge is, let's say that for me, the Indonesian market is really new, right? I worked 10 years in Dubai. I just came 3 or 4 months ago. Taylor has been here for quite a while, but the market is very different, the ways of operating. We have also quite a few question marks around capital access in the country here in Indonesia locally, because things work a little bit differently, right? Like from our first observations here. That's one of the challenge. So that's capital. We are supposed to go live with the product. Potentially it was end of this month, beginning of next month. But yeah, capital is one question mark. But the rest,
how much do you need? How much are you looking for?
It was around 70 to 100,000 US.
So 70 to 100,000 US. Let's take this question to Michael. So the question then would be, Michael, for companies coming in, what is the access to capital like for that amount, under 100K? And what are the difficulties or challenges or solutions that you found for a company like that here in Bali / Indonesia at large, if there is a solution?
All right, this is going to be a long answer. So take notes, right? Sorry, man. You walked right into it. All right, so let's look at this. If you're looking at $100,000, $200,000, that's angel money. That's below the radar of any any institutional investor, because an institutional investor is getting paid in part to filter deals and also look at due diligence, and they can't afford to go that low without they can't do the deep dive that they need to. Any investment that you're going to see is going to be an emotional one. Okay.
Yeah, right. We're looking for angel investors basically at this time.
Now let's look at, all right, so now you understand that this is all about understanding the demographic of your audience, okay? Now let's look at investment, okay? So now, look, I love Indonesia. I really, there's a reason why I moved to Bali to spend the rest of my life here. But I'm under no false illusion that it's perfect, okay? I mean, I think it's wonderful, and I think it's on an incredible trajectory. But to be clear, there's some challenges, and I give them a lot of credit. I'm coming from a country that, has 270-year history, and it's doing some, it's a train wreck. But here, it's on an upward trajectory. Least likely for number 3, least likely for recession. Second most likely for economic. It's on an incredible trajectory to be a world power. But having said that, you've got shifting sands for intellectual property, so you got no defensibility to speak of, right? Which is going to, an investor doesn't just throw money at it. They're going to be looking at, I need to see risk mitigation or de-risking, and I want to see, I'm hopefully looking for return on investment. So I need to know that I've got a sound business structure, right? The legal system leaves a lot to be desired here too, okay? So I don't say that necessarily to say that's bad about Indonesia. We have, quite frankly, Singapore right next door, which is considered a powerhouse, both for corporate structure and for legal, and for capital, and for intellectual property, okay? So I would look at it from whether you're executing in Indonesia, I would actually look for probably Singapore value add. I'm going to use the best of what I've got. It doesn't have to be all one flavor, okay? So I'm going to be looking at how do you protect if you're really asking for an angel investor, how do you protect my investment, okay? And yeah, I'm going to be looking for how it may not be in place yet, but I would really want to know what your defensibility strategy is. Because once you articulate whatever secret sauce it is, I mean, look, I'll be candid. When I was at Sony, we used to look at companies all the time, and we'd look at them and say, and I wasn't part of this because I wasn't part of that group. I was part of on the product side. But we'd look at buy or build. We'd look at a company. They'd come to us and say, oh, they need $2 million. They're going to build this amazing thing. And we're going to say, okay. Let's see, it'll take us 3 months to find the right domain guys. Then if we hire them and onboard them, that's going to take another couple months. And to get to alpha, it'll be another 3 months. You know what, it's cheaper just to give them the $2 million, or we could just roll right over and let them chase us. We've got, 6 lawyers on staff, right? So it was kind of ruthless, and a lot of corporates are like that. They're going to be looking at that. So my question to you is, if you're going to talk to an angel investor or somebody who has capital, you have to instill tremendous confidence in them that you're A, going to be able to execute, and B, that you're going to be able to defend it, that you're not going to be rolled over. Okay?
Yeah, that's clear. Yeah, but so for now the application is almost done. So the execution actually of the technology is almost done. But yet, obviously, on the long run, the execution is also important in other part of the business too, right?
I apologize
but
for the long answer.
Yeah.
Thank you, my brother. What we'll do you have one? If you pass the microphone forward. Again, we're on like an Ask Michael Anything. This is the last one, but I've got small questions for you. So this is great. Thank you, brother. I appreciate you. Because again, like as I mentioned before, people watching here and at home, they're in different places. We get between 5,000 to 10,000 people that view this when we repost it, right? So I'm sure some of them are thinking about that kind of thing, right? And it's always been about how do we add value and give value to people like you and you and you and you and you and you and the ones watching. So really appreciate you having the question and making the mission to come, right? Respect. Sister.
Yes. So, well, again, thank you, Robert, for hosting the show. I've been following you for a while, and yeah, one of the main reasons that I came here today physically is really to say hi again.
C'est incroyable.
And as always, you always have really incredible guests and inspiring guests, and one of the reasons was also to meet Michael. My question for you, Michael, is I was really intrigued when I read the bio, the description for the event today, and I was like, oh, I have to be there. I want to learn everything about your, hear all those stories and the experience that you have from Silicon Valley to Bali. Really, a lot to learn for sure. So, and something really piqued my curiosity is unlocking systemic value, because I'm a systems engineer, and I also, as we talked earlier, I have a very international background, and you talked about cultural boundaries, and I was wondering, is there like any frameworks or tools, methods around finding this systemic value and working around all those cultural boundaries? I'm sure there's not like a silver bullet or something. But yeah, it's like because I read also you're into the design thinking, and so yeah, are there any specific approaches to find those systemic values?
Let me see if I can try to take a run at this, and Robert's going to rein me in if I don't get it right, because I know he knows how to manage.
Rein him in.
Yeah, talent in the zoo. So let's start with a system level thinking. Yes. Okay, one of the things the world, if you look at the World Economic Forum, for example, they look at the most important skills for 2025. They talk about systemic issues and things like problem solving, the non-linear versus the linear. Yeah. The linear got us here, and I think the non-linear systems level thinking is what's going to help solve some of these big problems. And the things that I like to teach, because I started teaching in 2015, I guess. In grad school, I started looking at what are the skills. Yes, I can teach entrepreneurship, capitalization, strategies, innovation. It's all pretty straightforward, and how venture funds work and corporate venture and not decrypting them. But it's the nonlinear skill sets that I find incredibly fascinating. Things like the cultural localization, understanding applied critical thinking, not the clinical, but relevant. I mean, I used to take to my students, I'd show, how do you teach applied critical thinking? I mean, first you got to understand critical thinking, but I would show them a video. I said this is probably one of the poorest videos I've ever seen. A video called Big Belly. Do you guys know what Big Belly is? No. So it's a solar-powered trash compactor. Okay, and like the Harvard campus would buy it and put it on. And the only thing they said in their video is, and I'm just giving you an example of how I would try to teach my students some of these things. The only thing they'd say is, we save 4 out of 5 trips for our garbage collection. And I said to my students, I said, well, okay, how much do you think it costs to roll a truck? And they say, what's rolling a truck? Turns out it's $300 to $500 to roll a truck. Okay, and they said, why is this so much money, right? Because they, you don't just paying the guy $30, $40. No, you got 2 guys, and now you got the truck, you've got the people emptying the truck, you've got all the back end, you got the insurance, you've got, it goes on and on. And what did they tell you? The only data point they provided was 4 out of 5. So what do you think a unit like that costs? It's got a solar collector, trash compactor. It's got a comm system which says I'm full, come empty me, right? It's not very difficult, but it's got IP in it and so on, and it's got a communication system. They say, oh, $500 more. I'm guessing it's probably $2,000. So when are you going to reach cash flow break even? And so you're starting to think about that. The person driving is not going to be the president; it's going to be the controller, because they're finding lost money. So thinking about it on a systems level, and from a problem-solving standpoint, another example is I was looking at one I don't know if you guys know anything about satellite, but there's a LEO sat drop for low Earth orbit that's come up with a new protocol that's very, very elegant and very efficient, and it works with very, very little power. But the problem is, like most companies, they say, oh, here's my product. Please sell many. And it's a product, it's not a solution. Now, if you were to take, for example, the Alaska pipeline, okay? It's 800 miles of a 4-foot diameter above-ground pipe running from the wellhead to the port, okay? And I've never met any of these people, but I can tell you what that syndicate that manages that pipeline, they only care about 2 things: theft and rupture, okay? And in either case, as an engineer, pressure differential. But I got 800 miles. Basically to fire up a helicopter and to go survey, hours can be to result in millions of damage and loss. And so how do you solve this problem, right? I saw one company that 25 years ago, they pioneered what's called Smart Dust, a company called Omron in Japan, right? The king of sensors. Again, another product company. They said, please sell many, right? Smart Dust is a microsensor. It can only do 1 or 2 things real well, and then it talks on the mesh to the next one, or to its own little network. But even a microsensor needs power. And power and extreme cold, they hate each other. So I've seen another company that's being able to create energy on a 0.5 degree temperature delta. So I could put it on the side of this glass, and it's kicking off energy. So you marry the 3 of these together, all of a sudden now you've got a service at every 10 miles, an interval that's an uplink that says you've got a pressure drop at 460 miles out, and you know what to do. Now, it's a very different approach, starting with the problem, starting with the system level thinking, right? What problem? And they'll say, here, please, Robert, take my money. I need to solve this. And it's not just for oil and gas. Newsflash, if you got to think about it from a cultural standpoint, it's for chain of custody for water. I mean, I don't know if you guys follow water at all, but water is a huge issue. Potable water, don't even get me started. But, icebergs, right? Anyway.
We see there, you highlighted how important it is to find strategic partners, because if you have like a big corporate company, let's say in oil and gas, and they get pitched those different solutions, and then they can really make an ecosystem and create a solution for a problem that they know about.
For what you were saying before about the plastic, it's not just about money. It's about, can a partner accelerate time to market? Can they, you get the idea, right? It's about efficacy, right?
So we're just moving the mic. Now, Daniele, if there's anything you want to ask, or you're good, you're just chilling. I have 3 questions, right? And then we're probably going to begin to close it up. So thank you, Nadia, by the way. Thank you. It's a question that creates the value, right? Okay. So it's like this. These are the 3 questions, right? Which I'll ask him individually. But one is, what are you doing in Bali? Because one of the things, again, which I appreciate about you is that this is not a judgment, which means it's totally a judgment, right? So in life, you've got two things. You're either a spectator or a participant, right? So a spectator, if I'm watching a game of football, English football, Italian football, American, nah. Though David Beckham went there, changed the whole thing. Anyway, well, in England or Italy, right? From the stage, right? As in you're in the stand watching a game of football, soccer, but it's really football. You know the rules. You know how it operates. Yet, what happens is that on the field of play, it's a different set of rules. Right? So, for example, if there's a striker, good day, Jace. If there's a striker like a Ronaldo, right, who every game scores 5 goals, minimum. And when he comes up against this one team, because Daniele is marking him, he's a defender, the guy can't seem to score a goal. It's like he scores 1 goal, maybe a game, not 5. On the field of play, Daniele is in his ear the whole time, talking about his wife, his mother, his kids, right? So he's taking him out of the game mentally, right? Which means the end result is he doesn't play well against that guy. But the rules are different. Spectator can understand the rules of the game, sort of, but the participant understands the nuances of what actually happens on the field of play. And the two can be totally different. And the difference between those two can be success, failure, losing a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of everything, right? So when I say Michael, so he came here. I love the intro. I came here with dengue, right? And left with, no, you're good. But he's a participant, right? So the first question which I've got for you, 'cause I know some of the answers, but I love you to say, is, you know, like, what are you doing here in Bali? So what is it that you're contributing to Bali? Because I love it, but I want these guys to know.
Well, one of my students, I teach. I came to Bali on walkabout from Australia. I was disappointed, frankly. I love Australia, but the decisions that are being made are following in the pathways with AUKUS as America, and I left America because I couldn't be complicit anymore. I'm a do things because it's the right thing, not because I think I can get away with it. I just wouldn't be complicit. So I moved to Australia, and I found them following in the path of America. So I found that very disappointing. I went walkabout, came back to Bali. I'd been to Bali once on vacation, but I started paying attention, and it's always about the clues. And I started looking at it in a very different context. And it wasn't just about Bali, it was about Indonesia. And I went to Thailand, I went to Singapore, I went traveling, but I started picking the clues up. And in fact, I even went, so I decided to relocate here and spend the rest of my life in Bali trying to make a difference, right? And to be impactful. So the first thing I did was I went up to Bandung and I gave a lecture for ITB, which is the Institute Technology Bandung, and they asked me to be on the board of advisors for the business school. And it's about real contribution. And by the way, all the stakeholders are all women. How awesome is that, right? I mean, you just wouldn't see that in America. No, and all the best questions I got were from women, which I think is amazing. I got great questions. But one of the seminars I gave, one of the women asked, Michael, could you support this? Could you help us understand the supporting logic and methodology that brought you to Indonesia and Bali? And I said, look, and this is 50 exec ed Indonesians from mid to senior level, from 35 to 45. Some of them are very serious stakeholders. And I said, look, if you look at it objectively, Indonesia is the new Germany of the Southern Hemisphere for energy, and Bali is the new Switzerland. And I don't care whether you're from India or Pakistan or Saudi Arabia and Israel or China and US, nobody would refuse doing business with Bali because you're neutral. It's not about what you do, but it's about how the message that you send out. And people are non-judgmental, as you so aptly put it. And that, to me, is something that you celebrate. If you can do it here, you build that pipeline I was talking about, you do a proof of concept here where there's you do it on an atoll, without a caldera where there's no external power, and you show that it works. It becomes an opportunity for a showcase. You don't have to build a huge pipeline, you just have to show that it works. And who breathing on the planet would ever say no to come to Bali, right? It is neutral. And in many, you look around the countries out. I said, why Indonesia? Well, they stopped selling coal and nickel to China, and they said, no, we would stop treating us like a colony. We want to make our own batteries and lift ourselves on the supply chain, value chain. First high-speed rail in Southeast Asia. Moving the new capital. These are all very long game thinking. This is long game thinking. Are they making some mistakes? Sure. But it's a learning exercise. It's on the uptick. And quite frankly, I think I've learned a lot of lessons in the U.S. and in Holland. I used to teach in Holland, and in Spain and other countries. There are things that we can learn and leverage here. So can we leverage those battle scars?
Yeah. Love that. And then number 2. So there are people here either living in Bali or those outside, because it's called SpeakuP Monday. Destination Indonesia. So it is like a shameless, effortless to say, hey, this is what's going on in Bali, right? There's 400 episodes, but look, because this is all about participants in Bali, not spectators, right? So when they're speaking, it's from what's actually happening, not what I imagine will work, right? So the second question is, in whichever order this comes, like if someone is out there looking, maybe they're former MIT, maybe they're former Harvard, maybe they're not any of those, right?
Who? What was the other one? It was MIT. What was the other one?
Former Harvard.
Who? What?
Oh, that's
Snap.
Another story for another day. But may not even be connected to those 2 illustrious places. Just someone who's saying, you know what, I'm burnt out. I just want to go. Or you know what, I don't want to live in the US, UK, wherever, Europe anymore. I think I want to go and live there, right, in Bali. So you've had an interesting journey. We all have, but it's about you today. So if there was maybe 1 or 2 nuggets of advice, someone who wants to move here and they're professionally minded, they come with a background or body of experience and knowledge, what would you say, maybe a couple of the most important either mental mindset shifts or heart set shifts that they would need to make to come and really kind of integrate and work together here with Indonesians?
Look, I'd say this about any country, whether it's moving to Australia or here. It takes courage, and it takes. I got plenty of gray hair. You don't have any, fortunately, my friend.
My grays were coming. I just said, you know what? Let it go, baby.
He's too handsome for it. But it is. Try before you buy it, right? They have a visa, digital Nomad visa. Come on a B211. It's up to 6 months. I did it. To test the water, stick your toe in the water. Look, it's far from perfect. There are many rivers to navigate if you want to actually move and relocate. But that's going to be true about any country. There is a constant source of as you so aptly put it, intellectual capital here that's multicultural. There's also a percentage of bullshit, that you have to learn to avoid and just, walk in the other direction. That was true in Silicon Valley, and it's true in Australia and other countries. I'll give you an example. I was introduced. I was teaching in Holland in the second year, and the Prince of Holland asked to meet with me, and he said, "Oh, Michael, if you bring all the venture capital, it's going to solve all the problems." This is a billionaire asking me for money, right? Sounds really familiar.
A billionaire asking you for money. It's okay.
I said, look, he's looking at the problem wrong, and I think that the fundamental ingredients are absolutely here. He was looking at it from just throwing money at it solves the problem, and money will never just solve the problem. And I explained to him, I said, you have a systemic problem here. I mean, first of all, the VCs, the traditional institutional capital, they follow the money. They follow the value. So you have to create the value. And I went out and did my homework. I talked to 4 entrepreneurs, and I asked them, if I wanted to hire you, what would it take? He goes, what's my pension look like? All 4 of them said that. I said, you've got a system-level problem here, because without risk, there's no reward. So you need to solve that problem first. And if you can solve it, you've also looked at, they're going to look at what's easy for them. I'll invest in California. Why would I want to come all the way to, but I guess to answer your question, there's tremendous value here to be harnessed. It's not like a generic Silicon Valley. There's some unique value. There's a tremendous, there's profound even level of consciousness and sensitivity over environmental issues. If you want to launch something that's environmentally sensitive, this is the place to do it. right? So what is it that any given culture, whether it's Bali or Indonesia, I mean, I couldn't do what I want to do in Bandung or in Java, but I could do it in Bali. So you got to look at it from a very neutral standpoint. What unique value does any location have that you think can really catalyze, or are you just going to drift through? I mean, is the value? These are questions you have to ask yourself. But be cautious. That's all.
Love that. And the final question is probably the one question that everyone's been waiting for. Maybe not. So let's talk like this. So tonight, we've spoken a lot, a little bit about you, which I'm happy about, because I learned, and that's the whole point, right? We don't script any of this. We talk. It's an in-flow conversation. And I love that, because out of it comes things that you wouldn't expect or you don't practice, and it's natural, right? So we learned about you personally, which has been great. We've learned about, what your appetite is, right? And through that, kind of learned a bit about your experience and why you're drawn here, what the opportunities are here. The last question then is one of looking at the globe as a whole, right? And we've touched upon this, but we haven't really named it, right? So from your perspective as a global venture brain, right, or someone who's able to see what's happening globally within the whole venture sphere, let's call it that, what do you see is happening in the world right now, and over the next mirable, right? Over the next 5 years, 10 years or so, whichever you're comfortable to kind of talk about, where do you think the world is going? And then bring in why you think here is a really good place to be.
Oh man, you kicked the hornet's nest.
Of course, last question, the best question. Come on. Breathe.
Okay, so back in the early days, I used to be a defense contractor.
Oh, see, I didn't know this, by the way. Defense contractor. I should have started with that.
If you don't have situational awareness, do you guys know what situational awareness is?
Explain it.
Do you guys watch Jason Bourne? I used to use these videos to help share with my students. When he first loses memory and he's up at altitude with the young woman from Germany, and he's like, "I see everything." She goes, "I see everything too." He's like, "You don't see what I see. I can tell you every license plate in the parking lot. I can tell you who's packing. I can run for a half hour before my hand starts to shake." He's paying attention, and I've had the pleasure of working with the elites 6 times: Green Beret, Special Force, SAS. Green Berets, and after they've been in service, in business, and they're always calm under fire, but they're always tracking like this. They're always paying attention. Now I'm a non-linear wackadoodle, so I have a different approach to that. But it is about probably learning to pay attention. So when you look at what's about to happen, I ask Indonesians, why do you think Jakarta's sinking faster? Or I ask some of my colleagues, what do you think is really going on with Taiwan? And most people say, oh, it belongs to China. It's like, well, what's really going on is that, Taiwan Semiconductor makes 63% of all the chips in the world, over 90% of the high-performance chips, and there's been a chip war going on for 5 years. I bought a used Camry in Tasmania, and a year and a half later, I sold it for more than I got it, because there's a shortage of used cars, because they can't get enough chips to make the car. You got to watch and pay attention to the clues on the water, right? So, look, as an American, it's the history of America. Since 1973, we haven't stopped fighting, and more than half the American budget goes to the military-industrial complex, and so we build a lot of weapons. And whenever there's a problem or a conflict, 9/11, boom, we go to war, and it's been systemic. And unfortunately, China seems to follow in America. They do it much better. Road and Belt is basically just like Confessions of an Economic Hitman. So, I mean, we taught them how to do it. So there's a lot of geopolitical shifting going on if you follow what's going on with BRICS and so on. So I think there's a conflict coming, to be clear. And, for example, what you may not realize is that in the 60s, for example, there was even a specific American sub that was designed to be able to drop down off the coast of Russia and piggyback off their telecom pipes, and every month they would swap it out, and they knew all the comms. Well, guess what? 90% of the communication is on the Bachi Straits, just south of Taiwan. So, I mean, you start looking at these things. I wish I could turn the volume down, but you can't. So, I do think that there's a conflict. Hopefully, it'll do some long overdue house cleaning with America, as far as America is concerned. But a lot of people are going to be hurt in the process, especially with the racial issues that are going on in America and stuff. If you find out, I've got a friend, one of my dearest friends. I respect him dearly. He's in the U.S. Navy. He was a submariner, which means best of the best. This guy's, he's even worked in the Clinton White House, and he's 6'4". He's been arrested 30 times because he's black. And you don't see that stuff in the news, right? And how he still has joy in his heart is beyond me. And so I made a deal with him. I'm going to help him launch his product, but he's got to help me find my joy. My point is that there's a conflict coming, and it's not that I'm avoiding it, but I want to help. I'm really concerned about the environment. All the other issues aside, if you look at the real data, as an MIT guy, I have to look at the real data with what's going on, zombie ice, Thwaites Glacier, and all the rest. It's a train wreck. As a 60-year-old, I just turned 60. The level of in my lifetime of heat waves will increase 5.6 times. For a 15-year-old, 25.3 times. Okay, so if Thwaites Glacier alone, that's a 3-meter sea level rise. That means you're going to displace 1 billion of the 8 billion people. We just passed 8 billion. Congratulations, right? So, I mean, you start thinking about all these things. If you want to really be impactful, and that's something that I care about, do it from a safe haven, where you can really actually, look at Indonesia as a country. Okay, Thailand's lining up with China. Philippines is launching 3 new American bases, and everybody's drawing lines in the sand except Indonesia. They may join BRICS, but they're so big. They're the 4th most populated country. We don't have to draw lines in the sand. And quite frankly, we can be a torch in the darkness for a way to do things the right way, to be impactful, to look at economic drivers for environmental upside, which is stuff that drives me, right? So despite whatever geopolitically instabilities may be happening all over the globe, we can't fix many things we can't fix, but we can show pathways. And that's something that I'm very, very committed to. Snap.
Now I've got goosebumps all over. Mamma mia.
Oh, stop.
That's a special answer, brother. Because that's a special answer, because one of the things that we do as we begin to wrap up is that, there's a quote from a guy called Rumi. Anyone here know Rumi? Yeah, a few hands. Cool. All right. If you don't, it's cool. It's okay. It's like this. One of them. Yesterday, when I was clever, I wanted to change the world. Today, now I am wise, I want to change myself. That struck me like a lead balloon, and I think I've repeated maybe 30 times in the last 2 weeks.
I'm just merely a recovering troglodyte, but
but that's why I appreciate people like you, because again, you come from a background which is, what most people don't understand. I never understood it till I sat with a manku for a long time, over a long period of time. Some of the fundamental essence of Bali is actually logical. So it is like, make action to change the outcome. Sounds crazy. It's not spiritual stuff. It's just real stuff. Make action to change the outcome. The other thing which is really important is about where are your inputs coming from to make that decision, right? If your inputs are coming from what you wish would be the case, or what you're led to believe is the case, the outputs will not be appropriate, because you're not basing on what's actually happening. Like again, going back to the spectator and the participant. Right?
I want to add something.
Yeah, add.
My first SpeakuP Monday, I was a mere Padawan, right? And I came here and I saw Robert on a panel with the King of Tabanan, with Erdogan, and King Erdogan. And what an incredibly special individual he was. I don't know if you've met him or not. He's very humble man, and soft-spoken, but he thinks before he speaks. A lesson I could stand to learn. But he has a huge heart. And I'm listening very carefully to what he's saying. And at one point he was asked, and I'm sitting right over there, and he says, somebody asked him, what's the secret to because his culture has been 500 years, I think he said his palace is 500 years old.
350. Yeah.
See, yeah. And I got an invitation. It was so awesome. I got them Bali dancers, and it was great. But he said, what was the secret? And he says, humility. And I couldn't sit on. You know how shy I am. You get to know. And I couldn't. I said, respectfully, Erwan, I have to say that I've been blessed. I've been lucky to travel and see so many cultures, and I've never seen anything like what I've seen here in Bali. To be able to thread the needle, to navigate between, colonization and conflict, to unification, and so many different challenges. It's not just humility; it takes strength and it takes courage, and conviction, and compassion. And I swear, everyone stood a little taller, and it was a beautiful. I got to know him, and what an incredible individual. I just went to his home the other day, and it was just what a incredible. But that's part of what's resonating for me, and it's not just me. My brother was just here 3 weeks ago and had a chance to meet Robert, and he said something's changed. He went back to Kentucky. He said, "I want to move to Bali." Something's changed with him. 2.5 weeks. And he's already starting to relax and he's calmer. There's something, Trihata Karana, whatever, I don't know, whatever it is.
Yeah, Trihata Karana.
Yeah, thank you. See, I'm just a wannabe, right? But I learned, See, good teacher.
So much to learn. Everyone, Michael Fox, thank you very much indeed.
Suksama.
Thank you, Tropical Nomad. We'll see you next week.